letting the
Admit ko na
people
sila.
in. Yeah.
You need help with the, okay.
Again, admitting everyone. Is the sound on, Angel?
All right. Sige.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the guest lecture series of Art Studies 143, Contemporary Art. This session is brought to you by the third group of Art Studies 143, Contemporary Art through the Department of Art Studies in the University of the Philippines with the help of Professor Claudette May Datu. We designed this session for students and faculties to have an intimate session with our guest artists on topics that will be a source of new knowledge and insights on contemporary art practices. Once again, welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the guest lecture series of Art Studies 143 Contemporary Art. This session is brought to you by the third group of Art Studies 143 Contemporary Art through the Department of Art Studies in the University of the Philippines with the help of Professor Claudette May Datupi. We designed this session for students and faculties to have an intimate session with our guest artist on topics that will be a source of new knowledge and insights on contemporary art practices. Now, while waiting for the session to begin, kindly mute your microphone, turn your video on for preliminary checking of virtual presence, refrain from sending unnecessary messages to the chat box, and prepare writing implements for taking notes and questions that you may want to ask later. We will begin our session in a few minutes. Thank you. All right, before we begin, we would like to remind you that this session is being recorded for documentation purposes. By participating in this session, you consent to having all the images visible to the camera of your device and all sounds audible to the microphone of your device to be captured in our recording. We will begin the session in a few minutes. Thank you. All right, once again, before we begin the session, we would like to remind you that this session is being recorded for documentation purposes. By participating in this session, you consent to having all images visible to the camera of your device and all sounds audible to the microphone of your device to be captured in our recording. We will begin in a few minutes. Thank you. All right, welcome once again. I'm Roy S.H. Villadiego, and I will be your host for today. I'm a graduate student currently taking up MA Art Studies, major in art theory and criticism. Helping me and you today in this session are my esteemed teammates, namely Melissa Oy, the pub person, BA Art Studies, major in interdisciplinary. Hi, Mel.
Hello, good afternoon.
All right. And then we have Angelica Wali, our tech person, BA Art Studies, major in art history. Hello,
Hi,
Angel.
good day to you all.
All right. So today is quite a blessed day as we mark the end of Ramadan. On this day of Idul Fitr, we will be talking about contemporary art. Are you ready for this? To help us know the relevance of art in a time of pandemic, let me introduce our guest artist. All right. Our artist today hails from Bacolod City, Philippines. After graduating as cum laude and a civil service awardee in the College of Fine Arts in La Consolacion College, Bacolod, last 2009, she ventured into practicing art with communities through residency grants, both local and abroad, including IILM Art Residency, New Delhi, India in 2015. Project Space Pilipinas Lukban in 2014, and Southeast Asia Artist Group Exchange, Yogyakarta and Malaysia in 2013. She was the recipient of Glow Art Residency Grant in Belgium last 2016, a finalist of the Philippine Artist Residency Program Paris in 2012, and the Philippine Artist Representative for Nakan Contemporary Art Space in Spain last 2009. Her multidisciplinary practice in art brings about a holistic merge of installation and painting to her exhibitions, curiously presenting the in-betweens, interconnections, and the possibilities we can find all around us. She organized the group exhibit, Delayed Gratification, held at Home Art Trans, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia in 2015. She was a co-organizer of Impartial Organs, a satellite international group exhibit and artist visitation program during VIVA EXCon 2014, which included artists from Luzon, Philippines, Malaysia, and Indonesia. He is currently the organizer of Art Satellite, an artist initiative that will function to organize and design creative programs such as art exchanges, collaborations, and exhibitions in Bacolod City, Negros Occidental. He is the organizer of AIID, Artist Initiated Interviews and Discussions, which is an online platform that features local and international artists, projects, and initiatives through interviews and discussions. He currently functions as a regional curator for VIVA EXCon 2020's exhibition component under Dr. Patrick Flores. VIVA EXCon, or Visayas Islands Visual Artists Exhibition and Conference, is the longest running biennale in the Philippines. Everyone, please welcome Guenivere Decena. Good day, Ma'am Gwen.
Good day. Again, thank you, Roy, Angelica, and Melissa for having me here today. And thank you also to Prof. May for reaching out to me. And hello to everyone listening.
All right. Hello, Ma'am Gwen. As we proceed to Gwen's presentation, I would like to give her the spotlight. All right, Gwen, the virtual floor is now yours.
Okay. So since we are having a bit of a problem here in Bacolod siguro sa connection, I will be requesting Angelica to manage my slides for me. Okay. So I'll be talking about the relevance of art in a time of pandemic. Next slide, please. Oh, uh, Angelica, do you have the link version of the slides? Sorry.
Okay, so while we are waiting for the presentation of Ma'am Gwen, may I ask for you to send your questions if you have one in the chat box. We will be addressing them later. So if you have questions, if you're just curious about what Ma'am Gwen is about to discuss today, so I am imploring, I am encouraging you to send your questions through our chat box. All right, so here is the presentation of Ma'am Gwen.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay. Let me just read it. The world exists as you perceive it. It is not what you see, but how you see it. It is not what you hear, but how you hear it. It is not what you feel, but how you feel it. This is by Rumi. And oftentimes, when enlightened people talk, it seems deceptively simple. But the more you mature, the more you realize simplicity or how to make things simple itself is quite difficult, but not necessarily to children. Next slide, please. So let me share how Rumi's definition of the power of the mind with things surrounding it by a simple scenario here in my studio. So I have a 3-year-old daughter named Zaki, and she loves to play pretend. On some days, when she pretends to be a chef, our studio transforms into a restaurant. Every random object would then become kitchen utensils and ingredients. I would be the designated customer. She would demand that I taste her imaginary cakes and pizza made of paper and laundry clips. On other days, she pretends to be a doctor. Then the studio transforms into a hospital. This time, random objects become healing kits and medicine bottles, complete with a stethoscope and doctor's bag. I would be the designated patient. She would listen to my heartbeat from my wrists and determine my temperature just by looking at my hair, which is confusing even for a fake sick person. And of course, in most days, she pretends to be an artist. These are the trickiest days of all, because she will insist that my drawings need correcting. She would confiscate my sketch pads, finish and sign my works for me. So this is a demonstration that kids kids have this innate ability to really connect with imagination. Zaki's perception in our studio shifts according to the role she has assigned herself that day. This demonstrates the important function of both imagination and creativity, not just for personal development, but as a capacity of our entire species to survive. According to neuroscientist Heather Berlin, creativity is the ability to make novel associations between ideas. It is being able to make connections that other people have not seen before. Next slide, please. Okay, next slide, please. Oh, can you just go on and click everything, Angelica? Oh, okay, back to that. Yeah. Okay, so creativity is not just making wall-bound paintings or making exhibitions happen. Art can do a lot more than that. It is fundamentally people try to do what we can. We try to do what we can with what we have wherever we are. Especially in this time of pandemic when there is scarcity and deprivation, art is like this bridge between what is lacking and what is to be gained, or what are the other possibilities. Next slide, please. Okay, all people. Do you know that that is the literal translation of the word pandemic? Pan from the Greek word all and demos that means people, all people. But of course, next slide please. Now, we recognize the word as a worldwide spread of new disease such as COVID-19. Next slide please. Isn't it funny that one single word refers to the injured and the thing that causes the injury? I think this is really, I don't know, it's one of the ironies that surround human beings. And even the term human being is a capsule of ironies already. Next slide, please. This title supposedly raises us above other life forms on this planet because we know better. Yet even the act of knowing better in itself became a battle of who knows more, who can do more, and ultimately who can have more. Next slide, please. In this case, there's really, you can dare say that knowledge is not really power if it's just knowledge alone. Next slide, please. When we linger on the term, one word at a time, human is a bipedal primate belonging to the genus Homo, especially Homo sapiens or modern humans, us. We are literally part of the animal kingdom, sharing a common ancestors with chimpanzees 5 to 6 million years ago. We are able to pass on genes that paved a way for a bigger brain. This brain continued to develop generation after generation, passing on a little more perseverance and intellect in order to survive, like hunting more efficiently, growing our own food, creating clothing, and shelter during dire weather. In recent times, the brain is used for different levels of surviving. Now people hunt not just to eat, but for the satisfaction of hunting itself. Sometimes humans kill for food, sometimes we kill to gain wealth, sometimes for the thrill of it. Humans would kill each other to defend belief structures. They would even kill not knowing where the urge came from. In this sense, intellect in the absence of awareness is actually causing the bigger problems of our modern world. One may be forced to question if evolution pushes towards the refinement of previous incapacities. Is there something more to the human brain than its capacity to store information? Next slide, please. Maybe this is why adding the word being catapults the definition of human to a level higher beyond just thinking or conceptual thinking alone. Beingness is a pure state of consciousness, free from the clutters of the accumulating in the mind. Thoughts, even thoughts are forms that are capsulized in the brain through thinking. Beingness is that which is formless, yet is the essence of all forms. It is one's truest presence. It is said both in psychology and astrophysics that consciousness is a way for the universe to look at itself. Some would call this the soul, the spirit, or as what Buddha would call tatata, or the essence of everything. Next slide, please. Oh, okay, some slides are missing. But anyway, I would just go back to the other one, please. That I would just wonder with you all that, maybe someday human beings will start to recognize compassion as a kind of superiority too. And maybe the transcendence of knowledge into wisdom is the actual power and not knowledge. What if the higher state of evolution is indeed compassion after all? You witness it in every act of altruism. Every time someone places themselves into harm's way in order to protect another, every time a frontliner willingly faces risks to help others heal, every time you raise your voice to combat racism or hurtful prejudices despite the social discomfort that follow. These deviate rules of survival in the evolution. Maybe these are the beautiful snippets of our evolution as a species, and that we should take care of it and strive to maintain it. Okay, next slide, please. So just to maybe let the viewers have a little idea of what I do, I'll just show some of the works I've done. So this is an installation. This was actually my first solo exhibition, an installation here in Bacolod. Next slide, please. This is the same one. So it's a deconstructed space filled with suspended objects all tied together on a string. Okay, next slide, please. The next one is my first painting exhibition, which was in Manila. Next slide, please. Okay, this is, so just go on, next slide, please. I won't explain the works one by one to save time. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. And this is another solo. Okay, next slide. Next slide. So just take in everything visually. Okay, so for this one, do you think I should tell the story about this one, Angelica, Roy?
Oh, man.
I should
It's
tell
okay.
it. Oh, okay. Previous slide, please. They already know the story. So, okay, so the reason why this show is fragile is like this was a show, an exhibition done in Kuala Lumpur. And when I brought all my works, I was stopped in the airport there, and they didn't believe that I was an artist. They made me fall in line under the domestic helpers line, basically because I'm a woman and I'm Filipino. And although I'm not really fluent in Bahasa, I was trying to explain to them that no, I'm an artist. I'm trying to explain that um, these are paintings, these are candles. And after a short while, they let me through. But I realized that um, the paintings which are rolled together in one tube, they they cut the end part of it. They chopped it off, and so my paintings were damaged, and they are actually, some parts of them are just ruined. And for the candles, they shook it, the box, so they didn't believe that they were candles. Maybe they couldn't see it through a scanner. So when I carried the box, I just knew that it was shattered because it was shaking, like the sound is just magnificent. And so next slide, please. And so I decided to make Fragile the title of the exhibit. And I incorporated the damage to the works into the exhibition. So I just played with the broken canvas. I just played with the damages and the fragility of everything. And the broken candles, I just decided I will just melt them away anyway. So I melted them during the opening. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are still parts of the exhibition Fragile. Next slide. Next slide. This is a small exhibition in like a little art space in Switzerland. It's about, do we, Nietzsche's questions if we really have free will or not. So this is about that. Next Next slide. Okay, next slide. Next slide. So this is in another year, but the same space in Switzerland. This is playing with words and concepts. So this is entitled Opposite Side, and I painted it at the opposite side of the canvas. And the figures are racially, the difficulty of people to just unite because of their differences. So this is like the struggle of two people believing they are from opposite sides. Next slide. Tug of War. So I think I was having a conversation before with Leslie de Chavez when he mentioned the book To You Who Sitting in the Cave, to the one sitting inside the cave, or something like that. And it was just it as a visual just came to me, and this is what came out of it. Yeah. Next slide. So this is made of lipstick and eyeliners. The first time I tried cosmetics on paper. Next slide. Still part of that exhibition. This is called Depth. Okay. Next slide. Yeah, this was shown in Ultramundo, I think 2 years ago, and a lot of people called me out in Facebook because they said I was immoral and stuff like that. They made me hide it, but yeah, the totally misunderstood piece. Next slide. Okay, so during COVID-19, the eve of COVID-19 in the Philippines, especially here in Bacolod, me and a doctor here, Dr. Kuswangko, who is also a volunteer every time there is a calamity anywhere in the Philippines, he would just fly, unannounced and help. So since pandemic, literally going out and helping others was not allowed. And the only way that we were able to really help and contribute was to make an educational pamphlet and just distribute it as a Hiligaynon version. Because I think during this time, ABS-CBN was already down or something. And we made this educational pamphlet to make sure that, everybody just knows what to do. Like literally just hand it over to different corners of the city. Next slide. But yeah, people started to ask for the dialect that is designated to certain places in the Philippines. We ended up translating it to 14 languages and dialects. Like this one is Tiboli, just an example. So we have also in Italian and French, Vietnamese, Visaya, a lot. So this one is the Tiboli version. Next slide, please. And inside the pamphlet, this is what you will see. Like if you run out of alcohol, what can you do instead? How can the correct proportions of making your own disinfectant? How to, just little tips here and there. Next slide, please. And also the pamphlet became a tool to others who are able to go out, like designated frontliners. They would print out copies because we made a Google Drive that they can just open the files and print them out, and they're very easy to print. It's just The entire pamphlet is just one page, just one bond paper, back to back. That's it. So it's very cheap for them to print out and distribute. Next slide, please. Another interesting exhibition during the quarantine was done in PSP, Project Space Pilipinas in Lukban, where artists send 1-minute videos to show how they are doing during the quarantine time. And this is the setup of how it was shown, all of the videos combined. So as you can see, there is a safety protocol being observed. Next slide, please. And so this is the video that I passed. I played Lupang Hinirang with my guitar. It's just an instrumental, just the guitar. I was not singing. I played the Lupang Hinirang with the guitar, blindfolded. That's it. That's the exhibition. And the title of it is Alab ng Puso. It's basically when you can't see anything, you can't see clarity, there's dimness and hopelessness, you just follow your heart, ultimately. Next slide, please. Currently, these are the experiments I'm working on. So I make sketches, I cut them out, and next slide, please. Before, I would make sure that they are mobile, so like paper dolls. But this one is specifically for an installation. So they are meant to be touched, and they will be suspended on walls and on glass houses. Next slide. Oh, okay. So it's ruined. Okay, but that's typically how the installation is shown. Next slide, please. But now this is how the artwork is seen when the cosmetics is already applied on paper. So I'm still experimenting with it and learning that it has to be air dried and just left alone for a really long while, pretty much like when you preserve flowers. And so I'm planning on how to mount them not as installations but as framed artworks, which can be wall bound. Okay, just so you can have an idea of how I work. Okay. Next slide, please. And also now I'm functioning. I'm not a curator, but I'm just functioning as one because there is a need to here in Bacolod. This is for our biennale. It is already on its 30th year. It is known as the longest biennale here in the Philippines. And it was a very disappointing thing to miss it during 2020, but we found a way to still push through with it. So this is the exhibition component of the biennale, headed by Sir Patrick Flores. Okay, next slide. This is the artist I'm working with. His name is Perry Argel. So for him, he's not really making things. He's just getting the things from the shore, assembling them, and for him, he's just collaborating with the world. So it's literally just picking up pieces and assembling them and ultimately making a house out of it. So he lives on one of his assemblage. So he's a really cool man. Okay, next slide, please. We also have online or virtual conferences. So we talk with the artists how their works in progress are going, how are they doing. And so they send pictures and we talk about it, And this particular picture is us talking about why all of this matter, why it still matters. Next slide, please. Okay, so just to end, I will read something I've written in 2020 when the pandemic hit our country. I'll just use my copy. Okay, here it is. Angelica, no need to. You can just maybe, when you hear me speak the line or something, you could just click it, but I don't know. I will just read it anyway, so no need to look at the slides. So, I was once given the task of speaking about what makes art relevant in society. I had to ponder on this assignment so as not to belittle what I mean with a quick reply. The digitization of knowledge enables us to harvest bulks of information instantaneously. I would not be surprised if there are 100 available PDFs you can download with keywords art and society from Google. This is why I felt a dire need to be more sincere than trivial. I hope the listeners would not mind so much if I offered more of a personal insight rather than an actual lecture. Recalling my motivations back in college, I was learning art like a mechanic. I learned how to use the basic art tools like a mechanic learning the parts and inner workings of a car. I learned how to use uh, this helped me master my hands for long-term practice. After graduating, I was caught at a standstill. Now that I know how a car works, I wanted to know how to drive. And so I started learning art like a student driver, practicing which pedal to step on to go fast, which pedal to step on to slow down or stop. I immersed myself in community works, exhibitions, setups, artist exchanges, residencies, and so on. And like a student driver, I learned the rules of the road, such as following street signs, traffic lights, and proper parking. I encountered bumps on the road, wrong turns, and a few engine troubles. I consider every bit of failure as treasures, valuable lessons to be kept. By this time, the movements of the art scene, along with the complexities that entail it, became familiar to me. It allowed me to get a personal grasp on the often changing contours of the paths of art. But once again, I found myself at a standstill. Now that I know how the car works and how to drive it, where do I go? It is not enough to know how to make artworks. We also ought to know what we make artworks for. What good will it be if you know how to paint, but you do not know what to paint? It is like being an expert mechanic with a professional driver's license and a luxury car, but with nowhere to go. Indeed, where do we go from here? It is a very relatable question these days. We are in a season of collective grief, anxiety, fear, confusion, and disarray. Where does art come in now? What is the relevance of art in society, especially during these dark times? Let me answer this way. 1. Not everything is an intellectual matter. Grief, for instance, is not an intellectual matter. Just because you can define what grief is in words does not mean you can bear it better. Just because you can define how grief works to someone who lost a loved one does not mean they will not feel it anymore. Art is a tool that allows us to reach into the depths of emotion. It reminds us that perhaps to feel is just as important as knowing. Maybe somewhere out there, someone who was on the verge of giving up on life was saved by a song, a line from a book, a scene from a movie, a picture, a doodle. We take these little things for granted, but most of the time, at our lowest points, these mean so much more to us. This brings us back to ourselves, our humanity. Art lets us recognize the face of empathy by heart. It is a resource that we should never run out of in a season of scarcity and deprivation. 2. The framework of society is not just the crowd, but the individual. Do you know that no two people can see the same rainbow? The optical reception of every person at a specific distance and location allows you to see a different rainbow from the rest. In this same manner, if there are a million people looking at one painting, the audience count remains one because every single person will interpret that painting uniquely. This makes you see how important it is for you not to drown your own thoughts with those of others. Learn to think for yourself and be creative in that spirit. The singular entity is a concentrated catalyst of change. In this sense, artists have always been deeply involved with society despite their tendencies to seem detached or introverted. This form of introspection or detachment can be a gift not just to the artist but to their community. It encourages a space to see mundane things in fresh new ways, sometimes even solve problems that are simply overlooked. A better design, a new tool, a visualized plan. This is one of the artist's most significant contributions. The third one is perspective. Perspective becomes a binding element between the creator and the audience. Everything our society considers normal today was once considered out of this world, crazy, and even ridiculous. But then someone comes along and lets others see what they see in a more comprehensible form, thus paving elemental changes along the way. Scientists are one of the most creative group of people in our planet. What propels great theorists and inventors forward is their unique ability to see things differently. A different manner of looking at problems leads to a different approach of solving them. This is creativity at its ultimate function. As they say, if the only tool you can wield is a hammer, all the problems start to look like nails. But sometimes, the solutions required are more subtle than that. I imagine wars are precisely fermented because of this dead-end logic. Perspective enables us to re-examine the realistic conditions of our current state. It keeps us alert and wise in dealing with all types of circumstances. And lastly, we are in a highly participatory society. Whether we feel it or not, we are essential active members of society, all of us. To strengthen one's selfhood ripples out into a wider scope. The dominoes keep falling after that. The entire scale of cause and effect, the give and take, and the overlapping symbiosis are immense. But then again, it remains quite simple. Simple because it begins with the tiniest things. A choice to pick up a pen, a decision to look at things differently, an initiation to do something, like this talk or series of lectures, a bolt of courage to start again. Every tiny step matters. We best not take for granted the details of what we do with each segment of life. A single moment is all it takes, all the time. A single moment is all we have and can control. So make them count one by one. And the next time you are caught at a standstill, instead of worrying, capture the moment as an opportunity to discover yourself and see the world anew. Okay. If there is one simple thing that art can remind you of, may it be this. No matter how detached you may feel from the society you are a part of, bear in mind that you are not just a passenger. You are the mechanic. You are the driver. And where you go from here is in your own hands. So make sure it's somewhere where your happiness awaits. So I will end there. Back to you, Roy.
Right. Thank you so much for that very insightful presentation, Ma'am Gwen. So we have learned a lot. I think we will be needing a 5-minute break so that our audience will
Yes.
take
Okay,
in
go
the
ahead.
thought points. that we have discussed in your presentation. So Angel, we will now start the 5-minute break. We would do the honor of timing our 5-minute break. And also, we are here to remind you that while waiting for the session to begin again, kindly mute your microphone, turn your video on for preliminary checking of virtual presence, refrain from sending unnecessary messages to the chat box, and prepare writing implements for taking notes and questions that you may want to ask later. So before we begin again, okay, we would like to remind you that this session is being recorded for documentation purposes. By participating in the session, you consent to having all images visible to the camera of your device and all sounds audible to the microphone of your device to be captured in our recording. So let's all take in the thought points that we have learned from Ma'am Gwen's presentation. All right, so our 5-minute break is now done. So for now, we will be having a recap of what we have discussed in Ma'am Guen's presentation. So here are the main points as we present based on what we got from the presentation. So number one, art can be a tool to bring us back to our humanity. The lowest points that we experience in life are sometimes necessary for us to recognize the face of empathy by art. This fuels us to become more elaborate with our art. And number two, the individual can be a catalyst for change. This is artists' significant contribution. One does this by seeming detached, but this introversion gives the artist another perspective on how to view space and things. And third one, which leads us to the third point, perspective being a binding element of the artist to the audience. The comprehensible unites both of them, and as they reach a common point on how to resolve issues in a realistic manner. And of course, last one, this leads us to our last point. We all participate in this society. We are essential active members. Think of it like dominoes. If one fails to act upon a single moment, one tumbles down and affects the other. So, Ma'am Gwen, may we have you for our Q&A? All right, so at this point, we will be opening the discussion to questions from our attendees. We have 30 minutes for the open forum. If you wish to ask a question, send your questions to the chat box for one of our moderators to see, or use the raise hand button. In both cases, wait for us to acknowledge you. We will unmute your microphone and video while you ask a question. All right, so I think we have a line of questions right here in our chat box, but I would like to have the first privilege of asking you, Ma'am Gwen. So, Ma'am Gwen, how are you as an artist in this pandemic?
Oh, I'm doing good, and by that I mean I'm luckier than a lot. I am safe from the virus as of the moment, so I'm thankful for that.
Okay, so we are all glad to hear that you are doing well, Ma'am Gwen. So we have another question from Danim Maherano. So the question is, ano ang inyong idea at saloobin patungkol sa malikayang pagtatayo ng community pantry? Maaari ba natin itong kilalanin bilang kontemporanyong anyo ng siring? Maraming salamat po. Ma'am Gwen?
Okay, so we actually mentioned this before when we had an initial meeting. So sometimes certain ideas arise because there is a need for it to arise. There is an existing need. So that is the play of creativity. Example, have you ever wondered how the chair was invented? Maybe there was someone who was looking at a very huge person who was not able to stand for a very long time and is not able to squat either and doesn't have a place to lie down. Maybe because there is a need to solve this, someone invented a chair. So in that same logic, the community pantry arise because there is a need for it to arise. And calling it art is not the, how can I say, the most important and in-depth aspect of it. I was asked before, how are you? How did you become an artist? How are you an artist? What made you decide to be an artist? So I would always answer like this. I like to do things like, I like to create, I like to play with ideas, and sometimes these are not really exhibition material. If that is not art, then so be it. If I am not an artist because of that, so be it. Do you know that? Do you somehow understand this? What's his name? Danim. In other words, there is language itself. It's very linear. We talk about our ideas in a way that others will hopefully understand us better. But sometimes words aren't enough. That's why we sing it. You can't just say you're sad. I'm sad. You try to equate it with something that will really show them you're sad. So you make a really sad song and so they feel it. You make an artwork so they feel it. And in this sense, um, there is a bit of a gap between trying to convey your message. But the community pantry certainly is like a fruit of creativity. Someone thought of it and it's a brilliant idea. And not just brilliant, it saves lives. So calling it art or not art doesn't matter. It exists for a very, very beautiful purpose.
All right, Ma'am Gwen, that is such a beautiful statement to make. The community pantry is a fruit of creativity. Wow. Thank you, Ma'am Gwen. So we have another very relatable question here. So I also experienced this. So the question is, what keeps you motivated to make art in a time like this? So, Ma'am Gwen?
Okay. The when you say motivation, it, in the brain, there is this need. The brain has this need to learn. Learning is cathartic. It is when you understand something, not just know. Like example, when I give you an information, that is just a tiny bit of it leaves a tiny bit of effect. Like it wrinkles the brain a little bit. But when you make someone really understand, it is cathartic. And in this same cathartic feeling that motivation has to the brain. So it is also linked to uh, example when you are in a challenging time, especially artists tend to be more motivated. I don't know, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but sometimes creativity is pushed or is forced out of you because there is a difficulty. So challenges does not mean that you may be not motivated anymore. You should think of it in a totally opposite direction. You should be more motivated now because the world is changing. It's upside down. We should think of something. So the things that you cannot do anymore, you just leave it. You just leave it. Think of something. Think of something that you can do, and don't dwell on the things that you have no control over.
Right. Thank you, Ma'am Gwen. So, tama nga naman, no, ma'am. So, in this paradigm shift, you just take time to process everything and you might be able to express it through art. So we have another question here. So the question is from Camille Quintos. So can we have a copy of the recorded lecture? Would love to look back at the points discussed. So Camille Quintos, we will do our best to provide the recording of this session. So stay tuned. And we now have here another question from Maria Angelica. So we will distribute, this is rather a statement. We will distribute the recorded meeting link later. So this is to reassure everyone that we will be sharing this recording. So do we have more questions here? So Ma'am Gwen, if I may ask again, so we've met the first time, many weeks ago. So we've
Mhm.
asked you kung ang job ba ng isang artist at isang curator ay isa? Does a curator need to be an artist or hindi naman po kailangan? So what's your stand on that po?
Okay. So I think I mentioned earlier during the presentation that I was functioning as a curator. But I would like to clarify again that I'm really considering myself as an artist. And the function I have with Viva as someone who is curating, it is because that there is a difficulty here in our region. We can't really, we don't have a lot of curators here, or our schools to teach us yet, So we try to do what we can with what we have. So that's including me. I basically think of the relationship of an artist and a curator. Maybe their common link is to try to speak to the public. It's because art is meant to be conveyed, and the curator is maybe the artistry there that the curator offers is to make the artist more, to translate the artist themselves, and in that sense, the creativity that they are working on is in almost the same frequency. I would also like to again share the trivia that the term curator is actually originally used to someone who is someone who is facilitating a mental hospital in the past. So now curators are understood as someone who works with artists. So maybe there's still the same relationship there. Okay.
Right. Thank you so much, Ma'am Gwen. So we have another question from Andre Magpantay. So the question is, thank you for the amazing lecture. You have mentioned about different philosophies and psychologies in your art and life as an artist. How do you conceptualize and integrate these, your work, and what role does it play to your audiences?
Well, first of all, the role that it plays to me is very important because um, I make sure, personally, I make sure that the, the things I produce are very true to me. When you ask me about it, if my understanding of what I do is like a ball, even if you turn it around and give it back to me, I still understand it. So I can converse about it better with you compared to if I produce something that is not really true to me or true to my horizon mentally and emotionally, then I will not be efficient, I think, as a storyteller. So maybe again, I can answer in a different way that art cannot be separated from the mind and the heart and the individual. They are almost one, really, the artwork. So when you say that, what is the relation of uh, philosophies, ways of thinking, the relationship is almost 1:1. It's very real. And if you can strengthen yourself through it, then it will show in your artworks. I guess not, maybe that won't be clear to others, but then that's the challenge. There you are, your presence is there as a bridge to connect that somehow.
All right. Thank you so much, Ma'am Gwen. I love that. The art cannot be separated from your mind and heart. So we have here a question from Prof. May. So Prof. May, if you would like to unmute yourself and ask away your question.
No. Roy, can you please entertain Burger's question first?
All right. Sige. All right. So we have here another question from Burger Limbaga. So hello. How has your work changed since COVID-19? Do you have any realizations as an artist that only came to you during the pandemic? So Ma'am Gwen, sige po.
Well, I was not really that active digitally as an artist. I don't really, so a lot of my works in the past I realized are not documented. And I realized that it's a missed opportunity for discourse to not be able to show them visually anymore, to just talk about it like like a memory, like through concepts na lang. So uh, through the pandemic, I realized the positive impact of um, being able to migrate into the online space. Can you imagine if we don't have this now? What will we, this is such a great gift to us. And as an maybe in my practice, this is something that I will keep, even if the pandemic is gonna be solved through a vaccine or it will go away as a social problem. This is something that I will really think about, and I will always try to, and I also suggest that we make this a permanent part and existence in the artist communities. I think it strengthens us in many ways.
All right, thank you so much, Ma'am Gwen. So we have another question from Irene. So Irene asked, have you ever done any art or exhibits based on or inspired by your daughter, or do you ever plan to? So, Ma'am Gwen.
Yes, I usually I do a lot of sketches. Actually, I sketch more than I paint, and most of my sketches are for personal, personal use. And actually, for her baptism, during her first birthday and baptism, I painted, I think, a lot of like small portraits, just really fast portraits of my daughter. I think around 30 portraits. And I made them as my giveaways. That's such a mom topic. I am sorry. But um, these these little things also are like when your daughter grows up, they don't really separate art from, just the normal thing you do in the house. So one day I was washing the dishes and she was, disturbing me because I really love washing the dishes. So I don't want to be disturbed when I wash the dishes. So when she was disturbing me and I told her, why don't you go and draw something, just to get her away from me. And then like 5 minutes later she came back and she really has the drawing, and so the effect of, of maybe she thinks I'm just playing whenever I draw or paint. It I didn't teach her that, but it became uh, the visual aspect of learning is very powerful. That's why I mentioned before. That's what I miss in visiting galleries, because a gallery is the loudest silent place. It is the loudest silent place on earth. You can just sit there and you look at the painting. You don't have to hear anything, and it doesn't take a lot of time. It's just, the moment you look at it, that's it. Not even a second. It's just look at it and all the information is there. It's almost like mental telepathy. So I love that aspect of art. And it breaks boundaries and, the separations of cultures, because you don't have to really dissect a culture in order to feel or to get an emotion from an artwork. And yeah, well, oh, sorry, I'm already answering too long. I
It's
think I
okay,
answered it already.
ma'am. I think we still have a small amount of time to take in 3 questions. Is that okay, Angel? So we have here another question from Jana Rinos. Oh, by the way, thank you so much, Irene, aka Danica Manalang, for that question. So we will now proceed to the question of Jana Rinos. So hello, what makes you pursue to become an artist? Is being an artist need to be full-time or can it be an alternate career?
Well, actually, when I am both traveling musicians, so even my education is made possible because of art, in a way, because of their music. And so maybe that's why also to me, art is like, like music. It affects people in a very special way. And pursuing it, I wouldn't really say I pursued it because during college we didn't really have the money to get me into college. But out of like a strike of luck or destiny or whatever you call it, I won a painting competition, and the prize was, guess what, a scholarship. And so I took it as like is this like a light, it's like a light with an arrow pointing down, this is where you should go. So it it was not really like I will take this course, it's something that just happened. And also during the time I graduated, we didn't have galleries yet. We don't have spaces. So when we exhibited at malls or in the lobbies of our schools, stuff like that. So pursuing it as a career was not really real to me because there were nobody there was no one that I can see in my community and that made me say, oh, I want to be like this person. It was rare, and usually they're very ahead of me, like Nune Lucio Alvarado, Charlie Co. They you see them, but I never thought of it like, oh, I will be like that too. We were just there are things that maybe you are guided, if you don't mind me saying the word. Sometimes the word guidance is very dependent on an external force. Like when you say guide, it is both the verb guide, I will guide you, and also a guide is the person. The person. This Roy is the guide of this lecture. So the word guide is a very beautiful word, but there is something even more significant about that word. Maybe it is not necessarily something important because the moment you're born, you are preordained with capacities. And actually, when you enjoy doing something, it is not just enjoyment. It is a sign that is your that you are biologically wired to do this because your brain feels at ease and is very able and in full in full capacity whenever you create or whenever you are in that zone. And I also mentioned this earlier that the the meaning maker of the brain is also the creative part of the brain, understand or comprehend time or perceive time. So that's why when you are in a creative zone, you lose track of time. So it's like the future doesn't really concern you. The future, when I say future, like it's like meditative. So when again going back, it was natural. It was a natural movement on my part. It was not something like I wrote down on a stone and I said I will be this artist. someday. In fact, I don't even pressure others to call me artist. Yeah, it's up to them. It's not really a big deal for me to be called this or that.
Ma'am Gwen, that is very humbling to hear. So guys, we are actually learning a lot today. So if it's okay for you, we would like to request for everyone to stay with us and until 4:15. So it's not harmful anyway to stay for 15 minutes more in order for us to learn more. So we have more questions here, Ma'am Gwen. So interesting open forum. So from Benai Reyes, we have here, thank you for sharing your works. I would like to ask, how do you see your role as an artist in the among the participation of everyone, as you have mentioned that everyone is a participant in the world? Thanks.
That's really nice. That's very poetic. That's the most poetic question I've encountered today. Um, Participation. Okay. So I don't know. I guess, you know, technically there is no separation. Everything I'm doing affects everything. And same with you. It's like butterfly effect. They say that the gentle flap of a butterfly's wing on one side of the planet causes the eye of the storm on the other side. So this is like the to show you how real the connectedness of our universe is. Have you ever heard of the Goldilocks effect? The Goldilocks effect is a theory, not really a theory. Yeah, it's a theory in astrophysics. According to this theory, even just like a negligible, meaning almost zero, like a 0.00000001 difference in the chemical balance of the farthest quasars and galaxies of our universe. If there is just tiny bit of change there, the entire universe will collapse. That's I don't know if that does not blow your mind, but the question if uh, there is a participation happening, literally yes, literally.
All right, thank you, Ma'am Gwen. So we have here another question from Lady Krista Rigord. So what insights did you gain or want to impart from your recent VIVA EXCon exhibition, Kalibutan? Can you also share how your curatorial practice changed due to the pandemic, apart from working virtually with artists and other curators?
Okay, so okay, to tell you a bit of the word kalibutan. Do you understand the word kalibutan, right? You know what it means?
Kalibutan is universe, tama po.
Oh yeah. Okay. So kalibutan is the world. So the universe is still correct. And kalibutan in Hiligaynon also means mind. So it is Sir Patrick Flores came up with um, what is the word? Equivalent, a same equivalent. It's like an equivalent word. Kalibutan and as both the mind or consciousness and kalibutan as the world, as the physical world. So how artists are working with this is really interesting. So the artists working with found objects and making a house out of it and living inside it. Okay, and the other artist is a young lady who is making a feminist film, a local feminist film um, about consciousness racing, because consciousness racing is, or when you say raise your consciousness, that term is actually, it originated from a feminist back in New York they would they would like gather. There was not really a term feminist per se. They would just like gather and tell each other uh, their current situation. Like example, when someone feels oppressed, but they're not sure because society made them believe that that's normal. But maybe deep inside they knew something's wrong. So they gathered and kind of just shared their concerns like, hey, you guys, my husband punched me last night. And the other one said, yeah, me too. Should I be mad? Should I be, you know? And then later on, these tiny conversations between women evolved into a realization that, hey, yeah, this is wrong. Yeah, so sometimes consciousness is raised not just individually, not just on your own. Sometimes it helps to gather, to raise consciousness. So it's like it's a group effort sometimes. So this is in contrast to Perry Argel, who is working with consciousness as a being. So he's working on the theme kalibutan as an organism and not an organization. To him, doing what you do on a daily basis is already the biggest change you can have. So working with these two is really it's really fun and it's very interesting for me. And um, basically, we have 4 nodes for the kalibutan, not just the virtual conferences, but we will also try to make a physical space for this. And maybe like for example for the video, we are thinking of creating a safe house as a theater where um, Peke Galiaga was an existing presence here for a long time. So how you deal with cinema and viewing it and making sure that people are safe, for sure the people here know what they're doing. And with other artists, not just me, because I'm just one of the curators in for region 6.
Mm.
It is interesting also to know that other artists decided to make performance arts through live streaming and making others participate. And there is also like this artist who is uh, he is he is a seaman. He works in he sails basically, and he would paint the ocean in different parts of the journey. So he will be showing that the paintings. So some parts of the ocean. So it's like he circumnavigated the earth. He literally circled the globe, and he painted different faces of the ocean, which is a majority of our planet. And he like some works are calm, some works are raging. So it's very interesting. You see a lot of there's also a graffiti artist who's gonna make a room, a mural where, but it's like a helmet room, so people just wear it, and it's very interesting, yeah, to see the development of their works.
All right, thank you so much, Ma'am Gwen. So for our final question, so Prof. May, if you would do the
Ah,
honor.
thank you. Thank you, Roy. I have 2 questions actually, Gwen. No? First of all, I'd just like to say or say here that an artist like you is not your usual artist, the traditional artist who is in a
Thank you.
esoteric field, just working in the studio. Most artists today, especially those found in the regions, are also cultural workers and organizers. You
Mhm.
wear several hats, and sometimes um, you are the circumstances demand it. Like you were suddenly serving as a curator for some reason or another. All right. So that's just what I wanted to put in here, no? That artists today are very different from
Mm,
some artists are still working in their studios solely, but
mm,
young artists like you today, or not so young artists, of course I know some artists my age who are also wearing many hats. Probably it's because of the context, no, that artists really have to be compelled to join and be part of that universe, that wonderful universe that you're talking about, no, where one
mm.
inch that would go astray would already make the universe collapse, no. So that's also indicative of a creator, no?
Mm,
A grand designer who designed us
yes.
all. All right. My first question, no, it's actually just my only question. I'm really interested in your medium, your
Mhm.
exploration of cosmetics, for example, and other
Oh, okay.
are non-traditional mediums, not non-traditional in the sense that they're not acrylic or oil. Can you tell us more about that? I'm very interested.
You mean the cosmetics?
Cosmetic, the lipstick.
Okay, okay.
How did you get to use that medium? And how is it? How is it? How is it using a
Okay.
lipstick?
So for those who are working with oil, it is like oil. It is like oil paint. But just imagine, instead of having a ready-made, you know, a, a gel-like medium, and then it's ready to be put on canvas. Just imagine turning it into a powder first and putting, uh, maybe blending it with oil first. It's very, actually, you can, yeah, it's really like working with oil paint. But the difference is, the trickiest part of it is how to dry it, because only then can you really frame it. Otherwise, it will get ruined. And
But you have to use a lot of
so it is
lipstick.
like, yeah, it is like actually preserving flowers. If you've seen framed flowers, you see how. So what they basically do is they make sure that there is no moisture
Mm,
left on the flower. So they press it
mm-mm,
on paper
mm-mm,
that is able to absorb it like in a week. So you do that when you're in high school. You just flower on your notebook, and you forget about it. And later on, you find it again, and it's like this crisp, flat, 2D,
mm, mm,
object
mm-mm.
that is already like paper as well. So this is how I dry the cosmetic pieces I have. I make sure that they are totally free of moisture
Moisture.
before working with them,
And then you put on
with the frame.
fixative anyway. You put the
Yeah, I still put
yes.
fixative, yeah, since it's paper, and make sure it's acid free, of course. The
Okay. That's
paper,
on paper.
yeah, it's on paper, and the best kind of paper is, of course, assuming it's an oil-based thing, like an oil paint. So the best paper for that is um, oil painting paper. So
Oh,
there is a sketch pad that is really for
all
oil
right.
paint.
Oh,
Okay.
but how did you get to explore such a medium?
Okay, so a friend of mine from UP before gave me a gift, but it's really like a joke. It was like, I don't really wear makeup. Like even my professor in arts before would tell me, wear makeup. You have to look, you have to learn how to do this. So a friend of mine teased me and gave me a gift one day, and it looked actually like Egon's work, like a
You
really
can chill.
yeah. But and the effect of the makeup was very light, just like Egon. It was onto it like, oh, wow, this is really cool. So the
Oh.
joke was that it was already 2009. It was a long time ago, but I don't know. I was so fond of it that I got back and really tried to explore it.
Mm, mm-mm. No. So it started as a gift, and then
Yeah, yeah.
something inside you said, this could be nice to explore. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, Egon
Yeah.
Shield. Yes, right,
Like
LK. Egon
mhm.
Shield. Yes. Um, may I ask another question, Roy? Thank you,
Oh, ma'am.
Gwen, for that. Um, yeah, can you tell us about your other initiatives, like the AIID and another one I forgot, but that shows kasi your other
Okay. So
preoccupations, no?
okay.
The
Okay,
forum.
so the E is actually still under Art Satellite.
Okay, art
So
satellite. Oh, all right.
Art Satellite. So it is not dependent on a space. So we basically try to create like example workshops and group exhibits for a cause that and help with the community. And artist initiated interviews and discussions. Uh, as a first impression, you might think it's boring because it is basically an artist talking to another artist about art. So it's
Mm,
like, it's so monotonous. But that's
no.
only if you think of art, that's only if you think of example science as one kind of science. Like, have you ever heard a biologist talk to an astrophysicist? Like, when they talk about
Oh.
concurrence, like the repetition of seeing heavenly bodies as spheres. Yes, I'm talking to you, flat earthers. And example, the concurrence of having ears to many species in our planet. So the biologists and the astrophysicists can actually converse for hours. So it is like that to artists as well. There's not just one kind of artist. Artists practicing even the same medium, like a painter and a painter talking. You will still have an infinite uh, insights and bits of, you know, um, golden lessons to take from that. So that was really the idea of it.
Mm-mm. Yeah, because you mentioned artist-run initiatives. That's one, again, another
Yeah.
characteristic of emerging contemporary art. Actually, it's no longer emerging. The notion of being independent and even free from space, from any space, a physical space,
Mhm.
and you can do it yourselves, DIY, no, without necessarily being
Yes. Mhm.
beholden to certain funders
Mhm.
like the state, no, or
Yes. Yes.
collectors, ganyan, the marketplace. So that really makes me very excited, and I'd like to listen in to the conversations between artists. And probably when I teach contemporary art again, I'd look in on, I'll make your blog, or your is it a blog, one of the resources, if you don't mind.
Yes. A blog title.
Yes, okay, thank you, Gwen.
All right. Thank you so much, Prof. May and Ma'am Gwen. So, Ma'am Gwen, thank you so much for that very insightful open forum. As always, compared to, I know that we've met like a few weeks ago, and it's still very humbling and very inspiring to hear you, Ma'am Gwen. So, thank you so much for the time and opportunity to share with us your knowledge about the relevance of making art in a time of pandemic. So, would you like to give out a few words before we end the session, Ma'am Gwen?
Um, yes, I would like to say that you guys are amazing. What you're doing is amazing, and thank you so much, Angelica, Melissa, Roy, and thank you, Prof. May. Continue to do
Welcome.
exciting things like this. More power to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Gwen. So thank you once again, Ma'am Gwen. Your insights have given us new knowledge about contemporary art practices. For questions and inquiries to Gwen, you may contact her at artsatellite6100 at gmail.com. Again, artsatellite6100 at gmail.com. Now, may I also request everyone to open their cameras for our photo documentation for academic
Oh,
purposes.
cool.
All right, so gallery view. So cameras on, everyone. So Miles on, everyone. So Melissa, Mel, will you take the honor of taking the
Yes.
picture today?
Okay, wait lang po.
Smile, everyone.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Ayan.
All right, thank you so much, Mel. So before we let you go, we would like to take this opportunity to invite everyone to join us on the next Art Studies guest lecture series session on May 18, 2:30 to 4 p.m. Again, May 18, 2:30 to 4 p.m. Tuesday, same time, with another guest artist, Mark Salvatos. And for the evaluation of this session, you may click the link that's given to you in the chat box. All right, thank you so much, Mel. The evaluation will only take 3 minutes and it would help the Department of Art Studies improve events like this. So the link again is https://forms.gle/SUJWS capital W 8 capital C, capital P, T, capital L, E, W, G, 7, F, capital A. So it's now messaged here in our chat box. Okay, thank you so much, Mel. Again, this session is brought to you by the third group of Art Studies 143, Contemporary Art through the Department of Art Studies in the University of the Philippines with the help of Professor Claudette May Datuyo. This has been Roy Ives Villajego, Melissa Uy, and Angelica Wallet of Art Studies. We are thanking you all for learning with us today. Keep safe. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for keeping up until 4:17 p.m. We've learned a lot today. And of course, thank you so much, Ma'am Gwen.
Thank you, Gwen.
Very welcome.
Thank you po.
Roy, would you like to remain?
Yes, Prof. May.
Yeah, well, we can email them. We can email the registrants and then send the feedback survey to them as well. Ganun na lang.
Okay.
All right. Yun lang.
All right.
Congratulations, guys.
Yeah.
Congrats, no? So, imagine being with Gwen for several sessions, no? I'm
Yes,
sure
ma'am.
marami pang mga storya na hindi na kwento si Gwen pero naikwento sa inyo.
Very inspiring po, ma'am.
Grabe yung being misunderstood, no, Gwen? Yung iyong work. I wanted nga pala to point that out, no? Sometimes there's a disjunct between what the audience picks up and the intention of the artist. But, you know, we always look at this as a symptom of not being the uninitiated, no? Because you also need a certain competence to be able to understand the art, no? And yun lang.
Because ideas like knowledge is world property. So the moment you give it out, you don't